Friday and welcome to the weekly Vasl. Today I have an interesting guest on my podcast. I am here with Josh, and Josh is a gut health expert and he's going to take us on the journey of gut health. So, before we begin, I want to explain why this happened. So, I personally am a big fan of preventive care and understanding more about how I can take control of my body. So, I was researching a little bit about this, and then I found that okay, gut health has some importance in our lives, and I have zero idea about that. So what I do, I try to go online, I try to find people who make sense of all of this, and I found Josh. So that is the reason we have Josh on the podcast. He's going to explain it, he's going to make it easy for us to understand what gut health is all about. So before we begin, Josh, how are you doing?
It's a good day. It's winter over here, so we got a little bit of snow, and it changes fast. Like we went from 25 degrees to minus 20 really quick. So it's all right. I'm climatizing though.
Yeah. My wife's family is actually from Canada, but they're in Toronto, so a bit on
Which
the
is
south
colder.
side, which is
Yeah.
colder, right?
Yeah,
So
it is. It's
they're
wet.
very agitated. Yeah, they're very agitated by it. And personally, I love the weather because, as we talked offline a little bit, I am from South Asia, so we are climatized to 40 degrees. 45 degrees,
Hmm.
35 degrees. Now this beautiful 15 degrees rain is like a blessing, and I'm really enjoying it.
Well, I know a great therapist who can help you with that.
Great. So, Josh, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm actually an ex-paramedic. That was my first professional career. And it wasn't very long until I realized that the reactive healthcare that the westernized medical world really adheres to is garbage. You know, week after week after week, I'd pick up the same people for the same problems. The doctors just gave them different medication or more medication, and they never got healthy. They were always, I don't call it healthcare, I call it sick care. And that's really what they were doing. And so through a chain of events, I ended up leaving my career as a paramedic. That was almost 10 years ago. I became a personal trainer, something I've been into and passionate about for a lot of years. And there was such a radical transformation in one of my clients, not just weight loss, it was actually medically radical. She came to see me. She was 57 years old. Her name was Lynn. And when Lynn and I started, I was kind of in the beginning of my career, but she was 57. She had 17 pills and insulin for breakfast, 9 pills and insulin for bed, hypertensive, borderline congestive heart failure. She was on the disability list at work. She had all these things going on, and her health was just spiraling. We started working together, worked on basic stuff, food, nutrition, exercise, and basics of gut health. We got the body back to a place where it could really learn to heal itself. That's all it is. We just have to give the body the circumstances or conditions to heal itself. We provided that within 2 years' time. She was off all her medications except for two, which she needed due to a surgery she had on her stomach. And at age 59, she broke her first world record in the raw division as a powerlifter at age 59, and continued breaking records until about age 62, where she retired. And so that was my first window into we'll call functional health care, not sick care. And everything exploded from there. I got into nutrition and functional medicine, and I started seeing more issues. PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome, severe PMS symptoms, weight loss resistance, thyroid disorders, cognitive issues, anxiety, depression. All of it came back to the gut. And so I specialized in gut, and I started seeing more people get better. And the more and more things I started to see, the more I started to help with, and more severe cases came to see me. And now I specialize in inflammatory bowel disease. That's Crohn's and colitis, which is one of the, I would say, arguably worst um, gut diseases on earth.
So there's a lot to unpack there, Josh. I already have a few questions in mind. Of course, directly starting after your paramedic career, but what got you into this feeling of sick care versus health care? You told me that there's a lot of experience that you saw. Why do you think that had to do with gut health?
Everything I did always came back to the gut. Every time somebody would have an issue, it came back to the gut, or the gut was the first thing to get better, and then other symptoms started to alleviate after that. And so there's new research coming out constantly. There's actually a paper from Dr. Alessio Fasano, and it's titled All Diseases Begin in the Leaky Gut. And so we start to look back at the connection of the gut and the gut bacteria. We can see how important it is. Now, oftentimes we think, well, I got to sanitize everything. I have to, wash my hands. I have to clean this, clean that. Everything's always sanitized beyond belief, and we lose microbes. And I think there's such a misunderstanding of how important A, microbes are, and B, how important our guts are. And so if we look at this one, Ahad, we can look at the importance of something small. Are you familiar with a condition called toxoplasmosis?
No idea.
So this is a cool one. Women who are pregnant might be more familiar with it than most men, where the doctors will tell them, "Don't change the cat litter; it can be infectious. It's bad for you and the baby."
Yeah.
Well, that's because there's this one little parasite. This is the importance of small things. Small things make a big difference. There's one little tiny parasite called Toxoplasma gondii, and what it does is it has a prime directive like everything else. You and I have a prime directive since cavemen, right? Breed, pass on our genes, have children, and that's how it goes. Well, so does this toxoplasma. Every single living organism on Earth has a similar prime directive of growing and passing on its genes. And so, how a toxoplasma does that is it gets into the belly of a cat. That's where it can live the best, which is why, of course, women shouldn't change this cat litter. But how does a toxoplasma do that? Right? It's this one little organism. How is it so intelligent it can get to the belly of a cat? Well, the first thing it does, it likes to infect rodents like mice because it knows that rodents or mice are cat food. But we know also that mice are afraid of cats. And this is where it gets really interesting. Genetically, it's in their DNA, it's hardwired for mice to be afraid of cats. Even a mouse that has never seen a cat or heard a cat or been around a cat will run when it sees one, or if it smells cat urine, it runs the other direction. But this toxoplasma overrides its basic survival instincts. It actually gets into its brain and burns out the dendrites around the fear center, which suppresses its fear response to a cat. So it's not afraid of cats, so it can be near them. But it actually goes one step further. What it does is it reprograms this rat's brain to actually be sexually attracted to the smell of cat urine. It stimulates a sexual arousal response. So now this mouse, whose part of its prime directive of passing on its genes is survival, is completely overridden in order to increase its likelihood to become cat food and end up in the belly of a cat where this one little parasite can grow and live its best life. And so this little thing is so powerful. I'll tell you one more, Ahad. This toxoplasma goes a bit further. It will infect anything it thinks can get into the belly of a cat. And it's known to infect humans. Now, humans aren't really cat food, right? Unless you die in your apartment by yourself when you have 12 cats who will eat your face. But on the other hand, in a lot of Eastern countries, right, the only predator of humans would be jungle cats, lions and tigers and other large cats. And so we've actually seen it infecting humans. But we look at humans and go, wow, they're remarkable. Humans do crazy things. They're fearless. Well, did you know that many of these people who have been seen running into burning buildings to save strangers or jumping into the street to save a random child who might get hit by a car, many of them have actually been infected by this toxoplasma parasite? It's even so
Ah.
powerful. The US military, there's been mutterings of them using it in soldiers to make them less afraid of running into battle for fear of death. And so, this one little parasite, as microscopic, as tiny as it is, can override a fully functional cognitive living organism to get where it needs to go to fulfill its prime directive. Now, that's one organism. We have upwards of 100 trillion bacteria living inside of our gut that all perform specific functions. They help us balance and create hormonal profiles. They help us stress and de-stress. They help us detox. They're part of your immune system. They produce vitamins. They're part of digestion. They integrate with every aspect. 90% of your neurotransmitters, that's what communicates to your brain, is made in your gut. And so anxiety, depression, all that dopamine, serotonin, it originates 90% in the gut. So if one little toxoplasma parasite can completely override something and determine whether or not it becomes cat food, what can 100 trillion of these little bacteria do inside of your gut if they're working either for you or against you? And that's why gut health is important.
Oh, that's amazing. I've heard stories, to be honest, about these little parasites that take control of spiders, of ants, and then make them like walking zombies. But I
Mm-hmm.
did not know that they could come all the way to humans. It scares me, and it kind of makes sense because I'm really scared of a lot of things, right? And I was always
Yeah.
shocked of people who were not scared of doing anything. I was like, what the hell is happening here? Isn't it? Aren't you scared for your life? I find relief that maybe it is a biological issue rather than some
Mm.
kind of higher spiritual being that they can conquer their fear somehow. So that thanks for
Yeah.
that, Josh. I really, really enjoyed the conversation. So what I want to do now, what I want to take this conversation towards is okay, we know gut health is important and we are trying to destroy it by using all of this sanitizing, thinking that germs are bad, thinking that medication is the answer. Here in the Netherlands, let me tell you a story. Are you familiar with the healthcare system here in the Netherlands?
I'm not, no.
So here, doctors are quite adamant in only providing you with paracetamol or Panadol, as they call it,
Mm.
as the medicine of choice. They refuse to give you anything else unless it is you're dire in need or something like that, right?
Hmm.
Mostly it's going to be that. And most people who don't live in the Netherlands are not happy about this, because
Hmm.
I come from a country where my mom just is visiting me and she brought a bottle of antibiotics for her, with herself, uh, to be safe if she got sick. I'm like, Mom, that is not what antibiotics is for. She's like, no, whenever you have a cough, whenever you have a little bit of flu, just pop some antibiotics and you're going to be fine. So we come from a country
Hmm.
like that, so our bodies are pumped with antibiotics where it doesn't need to be. But here in the Netherlands, they're pretty adamant on your body being able to heal itself. All you need to do is just ride it out, right? Use this paracetamol or
Hmm.
Panadol, these very basic
Absolutely.
painkillers,
And that's
and try to
interesting
do it.
because, well, yeah, you have to try and lean into it, but it's interesting because we look at this, and this one doesn't make sense. I'm actually working with a girl right now. She's 9 years old. Same thing. Every time she'd have a flu or she'd get the sniffles, her doctor would give her antibiotics. She's 9 years old and she has ulcerative colitis, which is bleeding from the intestines and, bowel movements 15 times, 20 times a day. And it's very, very painful. She's 9 because her microbiome, that's this community of 100 trillion bacteria living in her gut, have also been destroyed. That's because antibiotics aren't selective, right? They will destroy everything.
Everything.
And so it's exactly what you're saying. You need to learn how to ride things out because those bacteria in your gut, 70% of your immune cells actually come from your gut. So if you want to have a strong immune system that can fight stuff, stop dumping antibiotics down your throat because you're actually doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah, indeed. And the problem with that is because we learn so much that it's so difficult to unlearn it, right? So
Mm.
we talk about, okay, germs are not all bad and let's try not to do medication. But what do you do, Josh, when you're feeling a little bit sick and you're reaching out for some medication? How would you help your clients get off those medications?
Yeah, so what I actually recommend, a lot of the clients who are in my program, typically the people I work with, there's demographics, right, which is like age, where they live, how much money they make. But I actually work within a psychographic, and that's the mental situation they find themselves in, or the psychological state, which is they've tried all the Western world stuff. They realize it doesn't work. It is sick care, not health care. And they're looking for alternatives. So it's pretty easy to say, hey guys, instead of taking this drug or this pharmaceutical for a flu or the sniffle or whatever, try this instead. They're very, very adherent to that, which is nice. And so my recommendation is give your body more of what it needs. Anytime your body is stressed, and I don't just mean stressed stuck in traffic, stressed how to fight with the spouse, stressed over finances, anything that requires excess resources from the body is stress. That's exercise, that's growing your hair, digesting food are all stressors. And so being sick is a stressor because your body will burn through fuel, which is going to be vitamins and minerals and calories and all of that at an increased rate when you're sick because it's trying to arm up the body with more resources, more weaponry to fight these flu bacteria and these viruses. And so what I tell my clients, give your body more soldiers to fight. So a basic blend I use, if it's a flu or a cold or something microbial may be coming in, I always go to plants. I use oregano, you can use thyme, you can use a lot of ginger, you can even use mushrooms. It's going to be things like your turkey tail and all those medicinal mushrooms, lion's mane. And I also will load them up on basic vitamins, vitamin supplements. So what we call your ACEs blend, which should be vitamin A, C, and E, as well as selenium. I'll use vitamin D. Garlic is great. I know a lot of people don't love it, but an age-old one, Ahad, an age-old great practice is the onions in the socks. Did your parents ever do that growing up?
Yeah, of course. Of course.
You'd be shocked. It really works. So what I'll do is I'll put a little olive oil, right? I'll wrap a little piece of saran wrap. I'll put a nice long like circle slice of onion on top of the saran wrap. A little bit of olive oil. You can even use oregano or some kind of oil that is antibacterial, and then you wrap your foot with that onion right smack in the palm or the not the palm of your foot, right
Yeah.
in the base of your foot, the sole of your foot is what I'm looking for, and you wrap it up in saran wrap, put a sock on, and just go to bed. And in the morning, you would be surprised. 99% of those flus or those things you're dealing with will be gone because the antimicrobial properties of these onions or the garlic or the oregano, whatever you use, even olive oil, very antimicrobial, will actually absorb through the feet, which is a super highway access to your lymphatic system and bloodstream. And all those chemicals get in and they kill what they're supposed to kill. And that's arming your body the right way rather than taking pharmaceuticals, which kill the thing, but also kill a lot of parts of you.
Yeah. Oh, that it makes a lot of sense sometimes, and this is a bit of a digression from my side, but have you noticed how you go more towards holistic approaches and you realize that, okay, a lot of the things that they told us in the past, they do make sense,
Mm-hmm.
but in the current era of empiricism, it becomes a bit difficult to be able to prove it. And for that, you just put it aside as wives' tales or superstition, or like, oh no, these are alternative medicine. We
Hmm.
don't know if it works or not. But how has your experience been so far with these holistic methods?
They're remarkable. And in many cases, they're actually better, much better than pharmaceuticals, right? Pharmaceuticals, the thing about them, there is no pharmaceutical that actually cures a chronic illness. They don't exist. All they do is mask the symptoms. Classic one would be, somebody's got a headache or someone's got arthritis. They take paracetamol or ibuprofen or some kind of pharmaceutical drug. What it's doing is blocking at the site of these reactions, is blocking your body's ability to basically open the doors that create inflammation. But there's still things that are knocking. Maybe it's bacteria in the gut that gets into your blood or your lymphatics and it circulates around. These we call endotoxins they produce. They're inflammatory. And so sometimes people deal with arthritis because those things are getting into their joint. Sometimes they deal with asthma because those inflammatory things are getting to the lungs. Maybe they have anxiety or high stress responses because they're getting to the brain. And so we can see a lot of this happening. But by taking these drugs, we're not stopping this thing from traveling. We're only blocking it from producing the symptom at its site. And so that's sick care. We're blocking symptoms. But by taking these other herbs and things that get to the root that actually break down the thing that's trying to knock, then we can actually reverse, heal, and cure a lot of these ailments because we're getting to the root cause. And that's a very, very big differential from masking symptoms to dealing with the root. See, Western medicine, they want to look at you and go, here are your symptoms. Therefore, here's your diagnosis. This is just one word the medical system can use to, in one snap, know exactly what's going on. Oh, you have arthritis. Okay, perfect. Well, now we know. So here's your drug. That's it. In the holistic world, what we want to look at is go, okay, here are your symptoms. Here's the defining word, rheumatoid arthritis or arthritis. You don't care. I really don't care. You have inflammation and joint pain. That's what matters. So I want to go backward instead of forward. Instead of forward to a diagnosis and a drug, I want to go backward from your symptoms to other symptoms, find your history, figure out where it started, and attack it at the root cause there. And most of the time, if not all of the time, it either comes directly back to the gut as the cause or one of the major contributing factors.
It's mind blowing how easy it is for us to find the root cause being one place, while the Western medication has made it so convoluted and so complicated that, you know what, it could be this, it could be that. Why don't you run 10 different tests to understand the situation? Even in the world of elderly care, there is this growing movement of hospice care, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not about, okay, I don't want to live my life getting tests and treated and routine visits to the hospital. I want to live at peace in my final few days. And sometimes those people who are in the hospice care turn out to live longer than expected,
Mm-hmm.
because they have made peace with their mentality, and understand that, okay, now this is what it is, I have made peace with it, now I'm going to focus on this life. And that really reduces the pressure on you. So I feel like the Western medication in the hospital system really makes you feel like there's something going on, makes you feel like there's more problem than what it is. While in your holistic care, when I hear from you, I hear like, oh, it's a pretty simple process. There's a disbalance in your system. That's also what I've heard in Eastern medication. They use like, there's disbalance in your system. Something is a bit more, something is a bit less. Why don't you try this, and it will help you balance the
Mm-hmm.
system. So what
We
I
call
want to
that
talk about,
homeostasis. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And what I want to talk about now basically is, you gave some examples of vitamins and a mix of herbs, but there's also this growing movement where they're commercializing this whole problem with gut health. And now you come up with probiotics, and the idea of, okay, no, these are all healthy bacteria that's in your yogurt, that's in your supplements, that's in your, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's actually a really good tie-in because the segue we just came off of, which is how we treat the body, does tie into the probiotics. See, the Western world, right? Like you said, everything has to be measured. It's all empirical data, and we can't accept it otherwise. The challenge is what that means in the Western world. We treat things wrong. Doctors treat things as individual parts. You got a thyroid problem, let's look at your thyroid. You got a gut problem, let's look at your gut. Heart problem, look at the heart. We're not looking at the body as a whole. And your body's connected with super highways that all communicate with each other. There's not a single part in your body not connected to another. Everything is connected. And this is why we see people getting sick and not getting treated. You mentioned the elderly in nursing homes. Well, there are cultures where they have elders, but they're not elderly. Here, they're elderly because they're sick and they're a burden on the system. There, they are elders because they take care of themselves because they had balance. And so we look at probiotics and other things that try to add more to a system. Oftentimes, we're not getting balance that these elders had. Where do elders exist? Tribes, a lot of indigenous tribes, African tribes, 80 years old, still going out and hunting and skinning a goat, doing work. Whereas back here, they're sitting in a chair rotting. And so it's very, very different when we look at elders versus elderly. And so, how do we do that? Well, for us, we want to say, well, I want to be healthier. I have a deficiency, let's fill it up. And so we'll take these probiotics, which they can be beneficial, right? We'll talk about all the biotics. There's probiotics, prebiotics, postbiotics, antibiotics, there's all kinds. And so we'll talk about what they are and what they mean. But the idea is still, even now, we can look at filling things up. Like we talked about taking extra vitamins when we're sick. But I want to know with everything, if you have bacterial issues, why did it get there? Right? I can put duct tape over the leak in my roof, but it's going to keep leaking until I fix where the leak is coming from. So what is imbalancing your gut is more important. And we can circle back to that. So let's talk about probiotics. The challenge is we don't measure, right? I know I just talked about not measuring. Now I'm talking about measuring. But a big thing would be like a GI map. And so a GI map is a stool sample that gives us as much of a bird's eye view of your gut bacteria as we can, right? Now, I know I mentioned we have 100 trillion bacteria. There's about 18, upwards of 18 million different species or strains of bacteria multiplied out to make about 100 trillion. On a GI map, we can see, depends on the map, between 50 and 100 of these bacteria. So it's a stool sample. We look at your bacterial DNA and so you have this much of this bacteria, this much of that one, this much of these guys, and so we can see our ratios. And so what happens when we take probiotics off the shelf is we take 100 billion or 50 billion mixed probiotics and different strains, we just pop them arbitrarily. Well, some of the most common ones you'll see on the shelf will be like a lactobacillus or a bifidobacterium or like some kind of lactoacidophilus strain, right? We see those a lot. Now, what if you already have too much of that bacterial strain? Well, you're just popping it in. Now you're putting fuel, you're putting gasoline on a fire. And so we don't really know what it is we're dealing with going in blind. So there is a lot of benefits to probiotics because a lot of people eat poorly. We'll say a lot of beer, a lot of pop, a lot of fried food and junk food. We're high stress, we're smoking. We're doing a lot of things that damage our gut bacteria. We're taking medications, ibuprofen, popping it like candy, taking antibiotics and doing damage to our gut bacteria. And so a lot of the times, just taking a probiotic, grab a new bottle, different bottle every month is usually an okay practice. But if you're taking these and you're getting worse, you have a bacterial imbalance you might be contributing to. And so we have to be very careful what probiotics, which are just live bacteria that we're adding in. And so we also see prebiotics. Think of it like food. You put the people into the system and then you have to feed them. So your probiotics go in, we feed them prebiotics, which are basically soluble fibers. You get them in fruits and vegetables and all kinds, and they're fermentable. And so your bacteria take these and consume them and ferment them and turn them into useful byproducts your body can use to help with the immune system, to repair tissues, for your nerves and cells and brain and all kinds of stuff. And so that's what your bacteria do. So like you eat and you poop, your bacteria also eat and they also poop. But we want them pooping good things like fatty acids and vitamins and all kinds of stuff rather than inflammatory toxins. And that's what your postbiotics are, it's bacteria poop.
Oh wow! Like so, to be honest, full disclosure, I only knew probiotics and antibiotics. I never knew about prebiotics and postbiotics, so it's great to learn a new thing. So I really, really appreciate what you said about the chain of command and how things are in order, right? So it's not really an individual thing. It's not about your thyroid. It's not about your back, and it really sometimes baffles me how medical Western medication and modern medication really tries to isolate something, because that's what we're doing in this world, right? If you look at outside of the Western medication world as well, we're trying to always isolate everything. Humans are becoming also more individual, right? You're isolating and you're like, okay, how can you succeed as a person? How can this part of your body get better? How can you do chest days or leg days on arm days? Like even in working out, we try to isolate stuff. So I think it's more like a mindset shift. And it's good to
Mm-hmm.
bring back that holistic practice that, okay, your whole body is working with your mind to get somewhere. And that all starts with your gut, maybe, right? And to get
Mm-hmm.
there, to get that holistic practice, what I would like to ask you basically is, if I try to fix my diet or if I try to fix my exercise to affect my gut health, where do I begin? Because I am a very bad eater. So I felt
Hmm.
attacked when you were telling me that, okay, you guys eat fried food, you guys do this, you guys do that, because I do that. I just had fried chicken yesterday, and just
Yeah, yeah.
today I had rice with shrimps, and it was fried rice, and I really enjoy that kind of food. And I know for a fact that when I don't eat processed food or ultra processed food, I feel more happier and fulfilled after a few
Hmm.
days or weeks, rather than when I go back to. So I don't eat sugar. I haven't eaten white sugar for a long time, only once a month. I break my fast, I go crazy, I get all the Snickers
Hmm.
bounty and all of that. And then the next day I stop. I'm like, you know what? Done for the month. And
Yeah.
I'm feeling much happier in the last few months. So is there something deeper there?
As to why your body's getting fatigued and tired and your moods are changing.
Yeah, also like how if I remove myself from these processed stuff, why do I feel a bit better? And is there a holistic approach to eating?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So we have to keep in mind a lot of these foods we eat today never existed before, right? They did not exist. We know for fact that cows are used to eating grass. So when cows eat grass, they are happier, they are healthier, they produce better meat, and they're just a better animal. They have more energy. But when cows eat things like grains and oats and things they're not supposed to eat, that they weren't evolved to eat, they didn't eat in their natural habitat, they get sick. Every animal, we feed it something it should not eat, it gets sick. Look at dogs and dog food. We feed a lot of dogs dog food, but their coats are dry, they're kind of patchy, they get goop under their eyes. You see a lot of dogs get those eye goops. A lot of that's inflammation because they're not eating raw meat or basically like foraging for food like they normally would. And so that's why dogs who eat raw are healthier. The same thing applies to humans. A lot of the foods we eat today, 1,000 years ago, there was never a Snickers bar, never existed.
Yeah.
And so we have all these modern foods, processed foods, machine made foods, a lot of these like vegetable oils or canola oils and safflower. These are things that never existed. And so our bodies don't really know. We've never evolved to learn how to adapt and actually eat these things. And so they produce byproducts. It would be like you putting sugar and water into an engine not designed for that thing. It produces a lot of sludge and can destroy the engine. The same thing happens to the human body. We put things in there. If your great 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 grandmother did not would not recognize that food, simple as that, we just shouldn't eat it because we're not designed to. We have a lot of excess byproducts, and so what happens is we eat things like I fry food still. Like I'll cook stuff in a pan, a frying pan, but I use like an avocado oil because that's actually an oil you can press like an olive oil rather than something like safflower or canola or vegetable oil that's an artificial, man-made, chemically produced and processed. It's actually probably do really well in your car engine rather than it would in a frying pan. And so it's very, very different. And so when we eat these things, inflammatory foods or fake foods, processed foods, they actually are more inclined to one, they inflame your environment in your gut. And so you wouldn't live in a house that's currently on fire, neither can your healthy bacteria. But the bad bacteria, the squatters, the ones that overgrow or maybe produce negative byproducts, love inflammation. And so when you eat this stuff, these negative bacteria, they overgrow. And when they eat this stuff, they poop negative byproducts or inflammatory things, which can change your moods, your brain, your cognitive function, your energy, your libido, your skin, your hair. All that stuff can change based on what you eat. And so we go back to this whole great, great, great grandma recognized these foods. She could have grown them in her garden and eaten them. That's what your good bacteria will eat. And so all your bacteria in your gut are competing for space. And whatever you feed will dominate the space and they produce byproducts accordingly, right? If we only put crackheads in every single restaurant, every gas station, everywhere, you're going to have a lot of negative byproducts for your entire community is going to go downhill. You're going to see more crime, you're going to see more shootings, more stabbings, more drug use, more overdoses. But if we, give our economy good things and plant people into schools and, fund education, then we have a healthy economy. And so we have to fund our bodies like an economy, like a neighborhood, like an ecosystem, and treat them the same. Everything's in balance. We all have crackheads in our gut, and that's fine. But when they overgrow, that's when we have an issue. And so they're all competing for space or real estate in your body. We want the good ones who make good byproducts to live healthily, happy. Getting my words all mixed up. We want those good byproducts to live happy and healthy inside of our gut to produce good things.
But I loved the example that you get about how we fund a neighborhood, how we build an ecosystem is exactly how we build our body. Our body is an ecosystem, and I am
Mm-hmm.
slowly learning about that. I think it it is a few months or a year since I've been on this journey to take it a holistic approach. Before that, I would also just be like, you know what, eat whatever you want, work out and burn calories a bit more, and you're going to be fine. But in reality, it's
Hmm.
just that you need to eat clean, and then even a little bit of walking here and there, a little bit of workout here and there would be beneficial, because eating is the most important thing. And I'll be honest, I did not want to believe that for years. Since I've been trying to eat
Hmm.
clean for the past 10 years of my life, and it is so difficult to accept the fact that, hey, Ahad, you cannot substitute love for food. You need to accept that, because I love
Hmm.
eating food so much and I get so much pleasure out of dirty food that I refuse to accept that this is harmful for my body. But that is the problem, that a lot of things that we really, really like and we really, really are enjoying, or we think it is necessary, is not necessarily good for us, right? As you said, processed food,
Hmm.
ultra processed food, Western medication, and the system that they're building on sick care, all of that, we feel like it's there, it is to support us, it is to help us, but in reality, it is what is making us a bit worse. Have you heard about the blue zones? Have you read that, watched that documentary on Netflix?
Absolutely. Yep.
It's such a
Yeah.
beautiful
The
concept
blue
of
zones are
how,
amazing.
yeah. And can you, using your point of view, because I've seen the movie, right? I've seen the video, I know what they're talking about, but your experience and your lens of the gut health, what did you take away from that documentary?
Mm. So blue zones are interesting because that's where people are living the longest. We have a lot of these centenarians or people who live over 100 years old. And a lot of them, the simple part is they're active, they're outside, they're getting sunshine, they're eating whole foods. It's that simple. And I think we overcomplicate it. You mentioned, well, if I eat this thing, I have to work out more, go for a run. And that's calorie culture. And so think about this, 50 calories sounds better than 50 ingredients or 50 chemicals. And so we look at these artificial foods, we're only caring about calories or macronutrients, and we're not taking care of the byproduct that we're putting into the engine. We don't care how much sludge is produced. And so that's something we need to change. But a lot of these blue zones, like classic one, I think it recently got beat out for first place, like Okinawa, Japan, where they would eat perfect food. They're outside, they're fishing, they're with the land, they're with the nature. And the reality is, the closer we get to nature or the original design for human beings, the further we get from disease and sickness. All these diseases, these modern diseases that we see happening, for the most part, like the vast 95, 99%, Parkinson's and MS and diabetes and all these things, these are modern diseases due to modern lifestyles and modern food and modern chemicals. But these are things that, again, 1,000 years ago never existed. We had different sicknesses because we didn't even realize that we should be washing our hands till about 150 years ago. But outside of that, right, these diseases, these inflammatory diseases, Alzheimer's disease, these things didn't really exist because we weren't consuming these things. We didn't have inflammation in the same ways. We had real food and real healthcare.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. I think going back to how my great grandmother, as you said, eats, is the most safest approach to eating and to understanding what I should be putting in my body. I really like the example that you were giving, that if you would put that in your car and your car would produce sludge, how, my takeaway is, how are you okay with putting that in your body, right? How are you okay with
Mm-hmm.
something that can be so uh, like harmful to machines to an extent? How do you know that they're not harming the machine of your body to an extent? Yeah, of course, not everything that you put there will be good for that machine, I get that. But the point is, things that are so ultra processed, things that are not, doesn't even make sense to us, eating them and then justifying them through empirical research is what bothers me. I really like the point you made, so I'm going to challenge you a little bit. So we've been agreeing with each
Mm-hmm.
other a lot, so I really like to challenge you a little bit. But when you said
Please.
about in the past that we did not have these diseases, won't you also think about that we didn't know that we have these diseases? So what is your thoughts on
I'm,
that? Because we didn't
I'm
have the
sorry,
exposure
what's
to
the
understand.
question?
My question is basically, if you say in the past we might not have had these diseases, right? These all modern
Yep.
diseases we might not have. But a counter argument in my head would be that, okay, but how do you know you had these diseases if you did not know what they were to begin with? If someone would have died of
Mm.
cancer, they would have just thought they died, right? They died, like they
Yeah,
died.
100%.
So, yeah. So
Yeah,
what
there
are your
was a
thoughts on
time
that?
that there was a time we thought people were dying and it would have been evil spirits or God hates you or was war or
Mm,
famine or something
yeah.
else. But a lot of these diseases that we can classify now, there's actually remarkable medical literature that goes back thousands of years that we can actually dig up and see what people were sick with. And so we can't go back because wouldn't have used the word diabetes or Parkinson's because Parkinson wasn't there, or Hashimoto's Dr. Hashimoto didn't exist. But we can look at the symptoms and say, well, people never dealt with these symptoms before. Right? We can say, well, people never dealt with these types of skin issues. There's no literature describing this particular type of dryness or this type of fatigue syndrome or any of this stuff. Because so we can look symptomatically, these symptoms didn't exist. Therefore, these names of these diseases didn't exist. Because that's what Western does. They go, well, here are your symptoms. Therefore, here's the name of the diagnosis. And so we can look back that way and say, well, symptoms didn't exist. Therefore, the disease didn't exist. Therefore, it must be a modern problem. And so we have to then go as, well, what changed since then? And then we can start to work backward.
Oh, that's a very good point of view. I really remember that because I'm a data analyst and I hear this a lot
Mm.
from people. They go like in the past, but the first argument a data person always makes is, yeah, but did we have data back in the day to actually prove or disprove this hypothesis? That's a very
It's
good
just
point of view.
different, a different form of collection of data, right? Like you look in Cambodia, I mean, yeah, there was genocide, but they collected the skulls, and there are a lot of places that would actually study these brains in jars. Now we don't go into, camps and prisons and murder people and take their brains to study, but we do have modern science and people donate their bodies to study. So it's just a different way of collecting data that maybe we don't recognize in our empirical, electronic, modern era, but they had it back then. They had textbooks, they had papyrus, they had drawings, they had all this stuff. I mean, Chinese medicine, right? A lot of these acupuncture goes back 3,000 years. A lot of these
Yeah.
Eastern practices are Ayurveda, right? So we know they were studying medicine. They just called it different things. And so we can translate that data to today and still quantify it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think that's slowly a journey for people like me to be learning that, okay, there is more to the world than empiricism. Because when you're raised in this cold, calculated world of data, you sometimes don't realize that, okay, there's more. Again, a holistic approach, right? We always come back to, it's like we're beating the same drum, that always everything
Mm-hmm.
comes back to, okay, it needs to be a holistic thing. You can't really move around with it. So I think we've talked a lot about what gut health is and how to fix it, but I really would like your opinion a little bit on prevention. So as I mentioned, prevention is better than a cure for me. So the clients come to you with symptoms, with problems because of Western medication or really poor diet, and you start fixing those. But how do I ensure that I don't get more sick in the future, or how do I ensure that my body stays fit without me having any problems right now? So is there any prevention practices that you would recommend? Diet, exercise, anything that you think could help benefit the average listener in their gut health and their overall life?
Absolutely. See, prevention is everything, but prevention comes from having a healthy body. And so your body will take care of itself. We operate, especially in the westernized world, under the impression that the body is constantly making mistakes and we constantly have to patch things and fix things and do things differently or feed it new things or get new supplements or try new this and new that, new protocols, new workouts. Everything is about headlines. And it's overcomplicated what health really is. Health it, it's this easy. We need to go outside, get some sunshine. Sun is not the devil. In fact, skin cancer is a relatively new phenomenon. It's been since these inflammatory foods, these inflammatory oils. Getting to the sun is a healthy thing. Okay, we need sunlight, but it will give you cancer if you're eating fried food, fast food, junk food, sugar, things that cause inflammation. So, number one, get into the sun. Number two, get outside. We actually need to touch the earth. Are you familiar, Ahad, with the process of grounding
No, not by the name, but
or
I think
earthing?
where I know I think I know where you're going. So please explain.
Okay. Yeah, I'll hit it for the listeners. So earthing or grounding is a concept of electricity. So we know the body carries a charge, right? We talk about acidity or an alkaline diet or this is too acidic and that. What it means, pH stands for potential hydrogen, which is just a chemical charge. So if your body is carrying this excess of potential hydrogen, potential charge, right? It's built up all these electrons by simply touching the earth 10, 15 minutes barefoot, touching the grass. What it does, the earth discharges all of this, alkalizing the body. And so we don't need to have an alkaline diet. We need to get into nature, get out of our electronic world, our artificial everything. Everything we touch is fake. It's polyester this and concrete that. We rarely actually get outside and play in the grass or touch things or plant a garden. And so what happens, and this isn't just some woo-woo, garbage that people will say, well, get outside. We can actually see it in your blood. And so if we take a live blood analysis, and what that is I'll basically draw blood, I'll put it under a microscope, and I can actually watch how your blood behaves right before, of course, it dies. And so we can see people whose blood cells are aggregated, not coagulated. They're not clotting, but they aggregate. Excuse me, they aggregate, which means they stick together. And so when they're stuck together, right, we lack surface area, because the more spread apart they are, the more surface they have to attach things like oxygen, nutrients to the blood. When they're stuck together, they lack that ability. So now we're deoxygenated. When we go outside and you'll touch the earth 10, 15 minutes once a day, you'll come right back in. You'll do live blood before, blood is aggregated. 10 minutes, 15 minutes touching the earth, come back in, all your blood cells are separated. Now they're charged differently. They actually repel each other, allowing more surface area for oxygenation. And the presence of oxygen is the absence of disease. Something Gary Brecka is very famous for saying: the presence of oxygen is the absence of disease. So therefore, the more spread our cells are, blood cells are, the more oxygen they can carry, the more disease prevention we have. And so now we're also looking at whole foods, natural foods, decreasing inflammation, getting outside, getting some sun, and we don't have to outthink our body. It will heal itself. It will keep homeostasis and do exactly what it's supposed to do. We don't need to intervene. Our body is the most complex, amazing, self-managing machine on earth. We're just constantly destroying it or breaking it down with fake things, and it cannot heal itself because it's always trying to catch up to the damage we're creating. But if we get out of its way, it will heal itself, and that simply is disease prevention.
Oh, wonderfully said. I live in an apartment, to be honest, so
Same. Yeah.
it's a bit difficult for me to earth myself because there's concrete all around me. But I do
But you
really
have a
like this.
door.
Yeah,
You can walk out of it.
yeah, and I can go outside.
Right?
Ah, you mean go outside? Yeah, but human beings are lazy people. So it's right. If I
Yes,
had a
we are.
backyard, if I had a backyard, it would have been easy. But I do believe, I do accept, and I believe in this idea that we really need to focus a little bit on getting a bit outside, especially in this kind of weather. I think I can speak for Canada as well. When it gets too cold, you just don't want to get outside anymore, and
Mm.
that kind of
And that's
stops
I
you
actually
from
have a
doing some.
grounding mat for that.
You have.
I have a grounding mat that I picked up. It was like $50 online, but you can actually see, if you were to take it like an ohms meter and measure your body's electrical charge, and you touch the mat, you can see it drop to zero. It's all negatively charged and it drops the second you touch the mat. And so indoors in the winter, -40, you can get a grounding mat, plug it into the wall, and it will take that electric charge down. It's not the same as the earth, but it's
It's
better
not the
than
same.
nothing. So there's
It's
always options. Yeah.
there's always options. I agree with that. I think there's always options and always things to make it. But as I said, human beings are always take the path of least resistance, and that is one of the reasons why we also are quite happy with the medical system and quite
Mm,
happy with the ultra processed food we eat. Because if you tell me, Josh, to be honest, that I'll take this medication and you'll be fit within a few hours. Or why don't you just pick up food on the way? It's going to take 15 minutes. Or you tell me, hey, why don't you and I go on this journey for the next 2 weeks, 3 months, 1 year, in which we're going to do some difficult stuff. We're going to take some supplements. We're going to do some exercises. We're going to clean up your diet. And then you're going to feel great in the next 3 years. I will choose the medication because I'll be like, you know what, I
for
want to get
sure.
fixed now. Yeah. So we love easy things. And what I'm realizing, the more I talk to people,
Mhm.
the more I understand about other people, is that yeah, sometimes easy is not always great.
Hmm. You really do get what you pay for in terms of money or time or whatever it is. I know I've bought cheap products before, something like a phone charging cord. If I buy the cheap ones, they always break. I end up spending more in the long run. It's more of a headache, more of a hassle. And so I know 100% we want cheap, we want fast, we want easy, we want convenience. And that really
Yeah.
is the bane of human existence, is how lazy we are inherently. If we look at capitalism, right? I've been doing sales. I mean, I'm a coach. I have to sell my products and services, but some of the sales training, guys like Alex Hermosi, right? Super famous right now for what he's doing. And he says it really, really well, that there are four really big value drivers that drive people to either desire or not desire something. And one of the big ones is time. How much time do I have to put into this thing? Number two is the effort or sacrifice. How much work is it going to take? What do I have to give up? Do I have to give up the good foods, the fried foods, the fast foods? And so we look at the risk. Well, okay, you can go and pay for liposuction. It's crazy expensive, but go to sleep fat, wake up thin. It's that easy. Or you go to the gym for $50 a month. You have to eat better, change this, make the time, go in, have to sweat. It's effort, it's work, and all these changes. We don't want that. And so we're looking for the end result, not the process, right? Everyone loves change, but transition is hard. And capitalism just absolutely takes advantage of that in every sense of the way. And everything is more convenient. It's at our finger. Look at Netflix, the click of a button, whatever you want. Amazon, boom, purchase, swipe, done. It's at my house, and I don't even have to leave. I can order dog food sitting on the toilet if I want to, or I don't have to do anything. And we love it. And so it really is the bane of our existence. And many of us will never change. People will hear this message and go, yeah, well, but, or oh, well, because, and that's their prerogative. But at the end of the day, we have to recognize if we do want change, we have to understand why we are where we are and be willing to take those steps, because ultimately the payoff is tenfold better. Everything else between then and what we could do or we could be, every drug, every quick fix, every shortcut, every hack, everything is a fraud of what could be or should be if we take the hard way through. And I don't know who it was. It was Martin Luther King or somebody who was credited for saying this, but something along the lines of, if you do what is easy, your life will be hard. If you do what is hard, your life will be easy. And that's true with work and business and health and everything.
Yeah, I 100% agree with what you're saying, especially the part about transition is hard, but change is easy, transition is hard. It reminds me
Mm-hmm.
of basically echoing what you're saying, that the problem that I have with most people is they think of an end goal in the mind, right? So as you said, liposuction, I get up, I'm changed. But what if I eat
Mm-hmm.
better? I become clean. What I've realized in my journey of self improvement and getting my health up in order and getting myself feeling better is that your journey becomes your end goal, right? Your journey becomes your destination because it
Mm-hmm.
never stops. Self improvement will never stop. Balance in your gut will never stop. The moment you stop taking care of your gut is the moment you will hit disbalance again, right? So it is a thing that is a lifestyle choice, and that is the problem I have with goal setting and these wants and wishes that the capitalist society tries to take advantage of. It's not
Mm-hmm.
about getting somewhere. It's about going there, going somewhere, right? Going somewhere. When you are on that
Mm-hmm.
path, that is what's important. And I think that reframing is needed. As you said, most of the people listening to this podcast might go like, yeah, but I have to work. It's very easy to sit on a mic and talk about these things, but what about work? What about family? What about the responsibilities I have? But think of your journey to self improvement or your health as the web that connects everything together. It's like an anchor. And if it is
Mm-hmm.
not good, it's going to weigh everything down, all other aspects of your
Yeah,
life. And I think that's very,
it
very
absolutely
important that we take away.
does. And I think it's true through and through. You know, it's interesting because when we look at how it works in any aspect, anything quick. I mean, look at people who win the lottery. Like, I'd love to win $50 million in the lottery. Are you kidding me? That'd be amazing, right? I'd be quick, boom, rich. Quick, get rich quick schemes are been a
Yeah.
thing since the dawn of time. But even statistically, there was even a documentary on Netflix years back about people who have won the lottery, and they end up, after a couple of years, once they blow through the money, they're worse off than they were before, because now they're broke and depressed, and they've destroyed relationships, and they made all these mistakes, and they're in more debt, or they've done these things. And so everything that comes quick, it really is a whole different world. Liposuction, I've seen people go through and get bariatric surgeries to help them lose weight because A, they're stuck. B, they don't have the discipline. C, they don't know how. Or D, they've tried and have been unsuccessful because their body wouldn't lose weight on its own. And there's a lot of chemical reasons, again, coming back to the gut and bacteria. But most of those people, the vast majority who go through and do these surgeries, never change their habits. They go back to eating the same or doing the same. And now they're worse off, they're sicker, they have worse gut issues, and they have permanent structural changes to their body, and they've gained the weight back or more than they had previously. And so these quick fix things, man, they look glamorous on paper, but they never work. I shouldn't say never. Some people, there are the outliers, but they very rarely do work.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it is a difficult journey, but we keep working on it. These conversations are a part of the process of trying to make you understand that, yeah, difficult things exist, and life is not supposed to be easy, Josh. I think that's the
Yeah.
thing. It is supposed to be effortful, but effortful isn't necessarily hard. That's what I keep saying to myself, right? Let's not make it hard.
Mm-hmm.
Let's make it effortful. So I think we're nearing to the end of our conversation. And before we do go, of course, I know that you run a podcast. So I would love to hear what you're doing on your podcast, what is up next. And also, you teach somewhere. So I would love to know a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's actually the work that I've been doing through gut health and gut disease. A lot of it's been previously thought to be impossible to fix. It's just autoimmune. There's nothing we can do for this Crohn's and colitis. Take these drugs and one day hope we don't cut out your colon. And we're changing the script on that. And so it's actually the success my clients had. I got an invite to be a faculty member and a lecturer at the Priority Health Academy. It's a functional medicine school where doctors will come and learn the holistic functional side of medicine apart from Western, basically upgrade their skills to healthcare instead of sick care, which is really quite cool. And so I talk about gut health. That's my priority, number one. I just want the world to understand how important your gut is. And one, it's the things that your gut is in charge of or has a role to play in, which is everything. And two, what things in our lives affect our gut. And so my podcast is called Reversible, the Ultimate Gut Health Podcast. And that's a little play on words. It's spelled reverse able, the Ultimate Gut Health Podcast. And we meet with some of the best in the world. And I don't mean that lightly. I mean, like, Dr. William Lee is the head of the Angiogenesis Foundation, New York Times bestselling author. He's been all over Oprah and CNN. He's been all over the world teaching this stuff. So we have doctors like that. We have famous personalities. We have the world's most famous farmer, Joel Salatin. We have homesteaders. We're talking to trauma experts and everything that really affects your gut. And so we do an interview just like this once a week. They're about an hour long. And we also release a second episode, which is just like a 10-minute quick tip. How do I fix acid reflux? Where does bloat and gas come from? Probiotics, good or bad? We answer these questions because we just want people to understand that your gut is in charge of everything. It is, I would argue, more important than your own DNA. In fact, your own gut bacteria outnumber your body's own cells 10-1. And so they have a huge role to play. And so Reversible, the Ultimate Gut Health Podcast, is about exactly that. And what is the gut for? How do we treat it properly? What things are damaging it? What does it affect? And we get to hear from some of the best in the world. And you can, of course, find that anywhere that you listen to podcasts.
No, no, great. We will share that in the show notes. We will share the link for the website as well, so that everyone can reach out to you if they're interested. They can also reach out to you if they're interested in improving their health. So that's always really important. And without further ado, thank you so much, Josh, for a wonderful conversation. I walked into this conversation not knowing enough about gut health, and now I'm walking out knowing more than I knew before. And that is always a plus for me.
That is my only goal for every podcast that I come on, is just for people to understand the gravity of our guts. It has a role to play right from conception to birth to life and death. Your gut health is there the entire way, and it has a critical role to play. And if we can just get people to understand that, we will see a lot less sickness and disease. And that's my primary goal. So thank you for having me here and giving me the opportunity to share this message with your audience. I really appreciate it.
No, great. And thank you everyone else for listening. I hope you had as much fun as I did. You could see it on my face. I was very excited, and I would bid you farewell, and I'll see you next week for another episode.